We're start recording here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. Welcome to Gardening in the Panhandle Live. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We're going to get going here on subtropical and tropical fruits. I know we've got folks from around the state and around the Southeast here with us, but we are going to primarily be talking about growing in the Panhandle up here along the northern Gulf Coast of Florida, up to the Alabama and Georgia line. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce everybody. Of course, my name is Daniel Leonard. I'm the county director in Calhoun County, Florida. I'll be your host today. We've got Ray Bodrey. How are you, Ray? We've got a special guest today, Jeff. Jeff, how are you doing? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, I really appreciate you guys having me on the award-winning gardening. It's award-winning, amazing that I'm here. My name is Jeff Wasielewski. I'm the commercial tropical fruit extension agent all the way down in Miami-Dade County.
Yeah, so we brought Jeff all the way up for Miami-Dade to drop some knowledge on y'all today, so that'll be good. And we've got another favorite here, Matt Lollar. Matt, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing okay.
Awesome. But letting the hair out a little bit, I like it. And behind the scenes, we've got a great team as usual. Today, we've got Julie McConnell and Beth Bowles operating things behind the scenes and running our Facebook feed over there. So we appreciate that. As always, if you have any questions as we go or any comments, feel free to type those in the chat or the Q&A here. Same for our friends on Facebook. Just go ahead and type those in as a comment or a chat, and our Facebook tag will get that to us, and we'll try to get it answered live on the air. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Jeff, I put these questions right here at the top today because the biggest deal we have to face with tropical fruit here in the Panhandle are the many challenges. And the first one we always think about, you know, we're in an area where we get frost and a couple of hard freezes a year, normally at least one. So the first thing, can we grow some subtropical or tropical fruit here in the Panhandle? And if so, how can we protect those guys from freezes?
I have no answer for that.
Okay.
No.
You're free to go. No.
So that's a big question with a lot of answers. So can you grow subtropical fruits? The short answer is no, you're not in the subtropics, but right. You can push the envelope. Hoop houses, you can grow a lot of different things with some cold protection there. But things like bananas, papayas, you guys earlier mentioned pineapples. These are things that grow very quickly, produce fruit very quickly. So it might be, maybe you're able to shoot a crop within a year before you get a freeze. Bananas are going to regrow from the roots. So even if you do get a freeze, they're probably going to come back. You can always put things in containers and move them in and out. I really despise growing plants in containers because it's so much more difficult. People ask if they can grow mangoes in containers here, and I say, if you have a chance to put it in the ground, put it in the ground, because the watering is a bear in the container, as you horticulturists know.
That's a pretty good answer. I know all of us up here at some point in our horticultural journey have tried to grow things and push the envelope and ultimately fail from time to time. My wild story was tried to grow macadamia nuts. I actually grew some pretty good sized trees for a couple of years, and then we had a hard freeze, and that was the end of that.
I got you beat, Daniel. When I was,
what'd you do?
I think I got you beat. When I was living on the Georgia coast, I tried and failed miserably to grow some coconut palms.
All right.
Oh, they would be so beautiful right there.
But it didn't. First cold spell came, that was into that.
That was it. Done.
That's impressive.
Okay. So Jeff, is frost and freezes, is that our main concern up here? And what are some other challenges to growing tropical type fruit that we might not think about?
Well, for sure, the cold is number one. Of course, the temperature. Subtropics equals temperature, tropics equals temperature. So it's definitely the temperature. And your first question, you also asked about cold protection, and I didn't really answer that. So if you don't mind, I'll circle back.
Go for it.
So cold protection, down here, we do get a freeze every once in a while, and we cold protect probably differently than you do. I imagine you guys use some wraps and things like that. What we'll do is 48 hours before we know the freeze is coming or very cold weather, we'll super irrigate the crop. So we'll super irrigate the field so the ground is wet, and that will hold heat. You can't do it the day of the freeze, but you can do it ahead of time, about 48 hours before. And that will hold some heat if you see it coming down the state. The other thing that's big here is we use irrigation for cold protection. I know they do that up the state as well. So right before it freezes, you turn on your irrigation and you hit the stem, the trunk of your tree. And then as the water turns to ice, it lets go of a little bit of energy, and that energy keeps it just above freezing for that moment around the trunk. So you must turn on the irrigation before it freezes, and you can't shut it off until after the freeze danger is gone. So that just constant water keeps it going.
Yeah, you see those in blueberry groves up here from time to time.
Sure. Okay.
All right. One question before we go any farther, and I know we talked about this the other day. What is the definition of tropical and subtropical fruit?
Well, the definition that tropical is easy. That one I know. Tropic equals it never ever freezes.
Okay.
So I'm a commercial tropical fruit agent, but I'm in an area where it freezes. So my whole life is a lie. I'm not a tropical agent. I'm a subtropical agent. So I'm in the subtropics. You're not. So that
awesome.
defines that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there, tropical, no freezes. Subtropical, your mileage may vary. All right. So Matt, we're going to switch gears to you over here for a minute. And this is just going to be just kind of paint with a broad brush here, because we're going to get into a lot of these species in depth and some future questions. But what are, in your mind, what are some of the easier subtropical fruits to try to grow up here in the Panhandle?
So probably my favorite eating fruit that I'm going to throw into this subtropical category that we don't really know what it is going to be loquats.
Oh yeah.
I think they're a great fruit tree. Now, I mean, sometimes we do get a little bit too cold and we might not produce much fruit, but they're also a beautiful kind of tropical looking tree too.
Yeah.
And another some named cultivars out there. You can get some pretty good size loquats. I mean, usually you're used to like grape size or a little bit more, but there's some more cultivars out there that you might want to look for. In case you're looking. Other than that, I just would use like a seedling tree. And just, you said paint with a broad brush, so I'd say any of our citrus that we can grow in the Panhandle, we're also going to throw into the subtropical category. Again, might need some cold protection depending on varieties, or species too. But as far as just in general, I'd say citrus.
Okay. Well, since we're on the topic of citrus, what would be some of your best citrus trees to pick, or your favorites that do quite well here for homeowners?
Well, the standard used to be our Satsuma mandarins. So the two varieties that we like there, and they're easy to find, are Wari and Brown Select. And UF has come out with a lot of different other smaller citrus that do well in the Panhandle. There's some like sugar bells and honey bells, and there's a lot of different tangerine varieties that do pretty well, and some tangelos. So if you hadn't had a tangelo, you know, it's a good mix between an orange and a tangerine flavor. There's like a Minneola tangelo.
Ooh, is that like the honey bell type?
Yeah. So they've got that little extra skin on top. It makes it easier to peel too.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Jeff, we're going to, you mentioned this particular fruit earlier, as it was a fast grower and you could have some success. We have a Zoom listener who wants to know, can we grow papayas here? And if so, how would you recommend that be done?
First thing to know about papayas is, unlike most subtropical fruit, you don't grow it asexually, so you don't graft it or air layer it. You grow from seed, and it's still pretty quick. It does have some disease pressure with papaya ring spot virus. So what we kind of do down here is we grow it quick and then we do it again. So
Okay.
that might be something that would work for you, because we try to get ahead of the ring spot virus.
When you say grow it quick from seed to fruit, how long are we talking?
Less than a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So that's really fast.
yeah. But of course, down here, weeds are a whole nother thing from you guys up there. Like we can get a weed that'll grow a foot in a day. You know?
Okay.
The other thing about papayas that's very important is from seed, they can be all male, the tree, they can be all female, or they can be both.
Really?
So the males, you have to rogue them out. So I would plant 3 in a little triangle or 3 different pots. And then when you see the flowers, get rid of the males. And the male flowers are very easy to see. Not only do they just have male parts, but they kind of hang off the tree. They don't stick on the stem like the females and the hermaphrodites. So
Okay.
get rid of those males.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad the human species not doing that. It wouldn't be too cool. So Matt, you mentioned loquats earlier. Clara Mullins has a question here in the Q&A. Do loquats grow true to seed? You mentioned you could grow them from seed. If you get a seeded variety, are you still going to get a good loquat?
You're not going to get that same loquat that seed came from. No, it's citrus would be about the only thing that's sometimes true to seed.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. We'll move on here. Ray wore his lime colored shirt for us, which we really appreciate because I'm about to give him a question about growing limes. So Ray, in your lime colored shirt, since you're in the mood, what are the best varieties of limes to grow for us here in the Panhandle?
Well, there's a couple that you're going to find here in the Panhandle. The common names are going to be Tahiti and Persian limes. That's the ones you're going to mostly find around the box chains and the garden centers and things like that. Important to know they're everbearing. They can bloom all throughout the year. June through September is going to be probably your prime time for that. But the big issue with your limes, like a lot of the citrus, if you get below 25-degree Fahrenheit temperatures, I don't know if the trees are going to make it through that here. So it's good to plant, your lime trees, in a place where for best success would be where they would have a wind block would be good. Just be careful to, keep them 10 to 15 feet or 10 to 12 feet probably apart and from a structure as well. Patty, I'm not a big fan of patio citrus either, but that's something. There are a lot of miniature limes too, key limes Mexican limes that you could grow in containers that you could bring indoors if need be. But yeah, as far as your larger lime trees though, your Persian lime, your Tahiti limes would be the ones that would grow here in the Panhandle, but you gotta, I think, keep your fingers crossed on some years.
Oh, I agree. I've done good with limes sometimes, and sometimes they really get a little too chilly for them. Jeff,
I got something on limes I was going to ask.
All right, let's do it.
Ray, have you ever grown a ring pour lime?
I have not.
It's the Meyer lemon of limes. You need to look it up.
Oh, really?
I'll look it up.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's I don't know what type of orange, but it's an orange and a lime cross, and they do well here.
Orange,
so it's like a sweeter lime.
Yeah, a little bit sweet, not quite as sour, but still has that good lime bite.
Since I've lived in Gulf County, I've planted a few key lime trees, and I've been pleasantly surprised because they're going to be a little more sensitive to the cold temperatures than your Persian lime or your Tahiti lime. But I've been really surprised at how well they've made it through. Again, cross your fingers, that they've made it through these years, these 6 or 7 years.
That's a good point. Well. That's a good point. One of the reasons we're doing this webinar today is because temperatures have warmed over the last couple of decades up here, and we are starting to see things push the limits a little bit of what we thought was possible a while back. And the Panhandle is a unique place. The southern part of all of our counties, or many of our counties, are on the Gulf of Mexico, bays, things like that, where we just stay 5 to 10 degrees warmer than we do up in the northern part of our county. So we live in a unique spot. So it may also depend on what part of the county you live in some cases, what you can grow.
And another acidic kind of hybrid that you might be interested in, if you're like that kind of lime fruit, is a lime quat, which is a cross between a kumquat and a key lime. Those have pretty decent cold tolerance, cold hardiness too. So something to think about. That's something you could plant in your landscape and also plant and have it in a patio citrus kind of format too.
You can keep all my kumquats. Those things are nasty. But anyway, Jeff, we got a question for you about bananas. You also mentioned you could possibly have success with these up here. This person from Facebook says, essentially, they've been growing a banana for about 5 years. They always have nice foliage. It's in full sun. We don't know the cultivar, but the thing never blooms and they've made no fruit over 5 years. What should they do, or can they do anything to get fruit? And if not, should they just start over with something else, in your opinion?
I think if they've been doing it for 5 years, that's enough time to know it's not going to be a great outcome.
Okay.
The thing that might help, which maybe they're not doing,
okay,
is if it's in a clump. I don't know if they have it in a container or in a clump, but if they have a typical clump of bananas, you don't want to let them just clump, so you have 10 bananas in one spot. You want to cut that down to 3 bananas, 1 big, 1 medium, 1 small, so you get a lot of light. The light is the key to getting the fruit. And then any leaf that is tattered beyond recognition or brown, remove those so the light gets on the stem. The light is the key. The sun is the key to producing the fruit. So that may help.
This is a thing I did not know. Thank you for that. While we've got you, Jeff, this is a plant that I know nothing about. We had a Zoom listener ask this question. So number one, I'll say, what is a Barbados cherry? And number two, could we successfully?
Answer to the first question is it's a small little fruit. It's a small little tree, probably gets to maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, more of a shrub. I think it's also called acerola, perhaps. And it's got a mild flavor, not really that sweet, not really that tart, nothing real special. It might be, no, but all the fruit are special. There's passion for all the fruit, for real. In my business, that's how I live. And it might be that this is a fruit that someone grew up with. So that becomes very important to them. So that may be why they're asking. But I don't think it would grow up there. But again, it's because it's smaller. It may be a container that you can move in and out, but you have to have that sunlight to get your fruit.
Awesome. That's a good information there. Jeff, you mentioned papaya earlier. Let's circle back to that for a second. Matt Orwatt, who is an extension agent over in Washington County, wants to know if you can get the transgenic papaya that's immune to that ring spot virus you mentioned.
I saw that question in the chat, and I thought that was a great question because down here at our research center, the Tropical Research Education Center, which is just half a mile from my extension office, we have a tropical fruit specialist, Dr. Jonathan Crane, and many of the publications that you're putting in the chat were written by him. And he actually has those papayas growing, and they are resistant, but they're illegal to introduce into Florida because the paperwork hasn't been done. And they've been trying to do the paperwork for 10 years, and it's still not allowed through the US government, even though in Hawaii they have them and they are allowed. So they're there, they're ready, but paperwork.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, nothing's ever easy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
All right. So Matt, we'll switch gears a little bit from trees and shrubs. Let's talk about a vine that I know you've played around with a little bit. So could you give us some advice on growing kiwi vine?
Yeah, I've unsuccessfully played around with kiwi vines. So
I knew you had played around with it. I know how successful you were.
Kiwi is not subtropical at all. It would be a temperate fruit. It needs some chill hours. So it really would probably struggle in the panhandle unless you do get some good chill hours. Daniel, you're familiar with the planting that's in Laurel Hill, so that's probably one of our coldest places in the Panhandle. For sure. And they've done pretty well just because he has cared for them over, I don't know how many years he's had those things.
Like a decade, but,
they're trees. I mean, they're 8-inch diameter on those trunks, pretty much.
People don't think about how big kiwi vines get. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, those are wild. So he's got the green varieties, the traditional kiwi, the fuzzy kiwi. But if you do want to try kiwi, I would recommend one of the golden varieties. So there's a number of varieties available from, well, they're developed at Auburn University, and you can find them at some different nurseries. So I've got a publication. Beth posted an article, and then she also put in there that Auburn AU Golden Dragon and AU Golden Sunshine are some varieties that you might want to look for.
Okay.
So kiwis, they need a trellis. And like you said, they get pretty heavy. So they need a little more substantial trellis than a grapevine. Probably about getting the vines about 6 feet off the ground is what you're looking at, with some good like 8x8 timbers for your posts. Other than that, there are male and female vines. So you need a pollinator. So I think it's like every a male vine to every 2 to 3 female plants would get you about right. So
that's
think
going to
about
take
that.
up a lot of room too.
Yes, they are going to take up a lot of room. Those, I know they recommend at least 15 feet between plants. So you need some space if you want to grow some kiwis.
Yeah, kiwi's not for the small yarded among us for sure. So,
no.
All right, that's good information. You can do it, kiwi. You know, I've seen the gentleman, Mr. Adams, that Matt was referencing, had, you know, some good years, some not so good years, you know. So kiwi seems to be extremely variable up here as far as yield goes. But anyway, Matt kind of talking about that. Crestview does get pretty cold, you know, Crestview, Laurel Hill, up, you know, Jay, those areas up in the far north part of the Panhandle get cold in late winter. So in those far reaches up there, what can you do as far as what we've been talking about, more subtropical fruit wise? Is there anything that would work?
All right, we're just sticking to subtropical fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, if you had, so Jeff mentioned at the very beginning about freeze protection. So if you did have a way to put some irrigation on your citrus and at least protect those root stocks, then you might have the ability to grow some different citrus in those parts of the state. But again, you're going to need some sort of constant irrigation that's allowing that water to freeze and just freeze and freeze and freeze. And release heat as it freezes. The other things, you know, when people ask about what fruit to grow, we usually start them off with blueberries. And would recommend some of the rabbit eye varieties. So like Climax would be a good one, or Brightwell. And then there's a number of others.
Okay.
And then, I mean, if you are lucky enough to live in Jay or Crestview, then I mean, you can always grow peaches or plums and some of the other temperate fruit.
I think that's a good point. As we start to get in some of these more northern areas of the Panhandle, maybe just try to grow what you can grow best. So leave the subtropicals to the more coastal people.
The right plant in the right place.
Bingo. Yes. There it is. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah. So Ray, let's close the book on papaya here with our final question on papaya. In your experience, Ray, and St. Joe, will papaya fruits reach maturity in Northwest Florida before we get too cold?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. Yeah, okay. Cold temperatures, definitely an issue. Papayas just can't handle that. You know, freezing temperatures, they're just not going to survive very well. You know, plus we go through a period of drought here in the Panhandle too. And if you don't have an irrigation source for them, that's going to be an issue. They just don't like these high constant winds too at times. We have the pollinators here, you know, they're self-pollinating, but they can be cross-pollinated as well. So we have that going. We've got a pretty nice environment for that. But these cold temperatures, these cold snaps that we get, yeah, they're just not a great place for the papaya.
So Jeff, our frost dates up here, you know, probably average, I would say our last frost is somewhere around April the 1st. And then, you know, our first frost is generally somewhere around November the 1st, somewhere in that area. Is that enough time to produce a papaya?
With your temperatures and the amount of sunlight, I would say maybe. I would say probably not, but maybe
Okay.
if you're a great grower, you can push it.
Okay.
And I know that a lot of people that are listening they love to push the envelope, right? That's where
Oh, yeah.
the fruit lovers are. They love to push the envelope. Like we try to grow mangosteen here, and that's truly tropical. It's ultra cold sensitive, and you just can't do it. But people try to do it, and they sometimes get a fruit, and then that's amazing. So
Fair enough. We actually didn't have, for some reason, had nobody ask a question about pineapples, which is ridiculous because people grow pineapples all the time and try to here. So I'm going to start with you, Jeff, on pineapples. What do you think about pineapples in the Panhandle? And then we'll throw it to some of our other speakers who have like actual, experience here doing that.
sure, that's a great idea. I think because they can be container grown very easily, they might be a real good choice. And
are they tropical in nature?
I would say yes, not tropical, subtropical.
Yeah.
Mangoes get thrown in as tropical, avocados get thrown in as tropical, but both mangoes and avocados need actually to properly initiate their bloom. They do need a good little cool front.
Oh,
So,
okay.
the names kind of get thrown around. But remember that pineapples are a bromeliad, which typically are epiphytes. We have hundreds of varieties of bromeliads down here, but this is a bromeliad that is terrestrial. So you water it in the roots. You don't water it in the center like you would a typical bromeliad.
Okay. Matt, I know you've grown pineapple a little bit here and there. What would you tell folks?
So my pineapple, when I break them off the top of the pineapple, I just shove them in the ground at my house.
Very scientific.
Yeah. Well, I've tried rooting them in like a dish and stuff, and I just failed at that. So for me, it's just easier to stick them. But I've grown them just along my retaining wall, not producing fruit though, just the pineapple plants. So they make an attractive, line on the wall there.
I know I've seen pineapples actually produce fruit up here, but like Jeff mentioned, they're mostly, porches or, a greenhouse or a hoop house, something like that, over inside in a pot. But yeah. Okay. Very good. We'll stay with you, Mr. Lollar, talking about olives. Now, olives, not really tropical. It's more, you can sort of classify that for us. But so this person says, I planted an Arbequina olive tree and it's struggling. Trying to keep it in a pot and protect it from freezing, but it's not thriving. So maybe just give us a little background on olives here in the Panhandle, and then just some tips on growing.
So we do have a few olive plantings in the Panhandle.
This is more like a Mediterranean type thing, right?
Yeah, so we got a whole new category. We got Mediterranean fruit now. So you got to think about the Mediterranean weather. And it's a constant temperature almost all year long. They stay between 40 and 60 for a long time, and that's what olives need. They need a consistent, like in the 50s for
one thing about the Panhandle weather is totally consistent
to produce. Yeah, we're not consistent at all. So in a container, I think it'd be a little bit difficult to grow an olive just because they need really good drainage. We've got a planting here in one of our heavier soils, kind of a sandy loam, clay loam soil, and their issue is drainage. So the trees are just kind of stunted at the moment. So I mean, olives are beautiful trees. It's certainly going to survive in your yard. As long as you get some age on it, and that you're not just planting it 2 days before a freeze or something like that. So I would see no reason not to, to put it in your yard, and it might be a little bit more successful. Just make sure you don't plant it too deep. Like most of our trees, we want to make sure we've got some exposed root flare when we're planting those things.
So it sounds like if you're in a spot with some sandy soil, maybe along the beach or in some of these sandier ridges in the Panhandle, go for it in the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Matt. That's really good. All right. So now we've come to the time where we're going to talk about the number one question that we get. We've gotten like 6 or 7 questions about this plant, and it is the avocado. So Jeff, tell us just give us, before we get into some of these specific questions, just kind of like avocado background in Florida, like what y'all's little industry is down in the south part of the state, and then just what you think about avocado in general in the Panhandle.
Okay, how many hours do we have left here?
You got like 3 minutes.
Okay, so short answer is, when you think about avocados, let's divide them into 2 groups.
Okay.
You have the little avocado, the Haas, that you see in the grocery store that everybody really likes. It's got a lot of fat content. That's grown
That's
in
the
California.
little harder brown one.
Exactly. That's grown in California and Mexico. We cannot grow that in South Florida because of the temperature. It's too warm for that here.
Oh, really?
So you might get away with growing a Haas up there, because I've seen in California, I've seen pictures of avocado groves covered in snow. It was very rare, but it happened. So you might get away with that. And then down here we have what's called a green skin avocado or Florida avocado, much bigger, much smoother, less fat content, and certainly more delicious than the Mexican or California.
No bias there.
So that's how you want to divide the 2. And then I mentioned earlier, I still have 13 seconds. I mentioned earlier that that avocados, the Florida avocados, they do need a little cool front. And down here we have a wet season and a dry season. The dry season is just wrapping up, but the beginning of the dry season is the beginning of November. So it gets dry, the humidity goes down, the mangoes and the avocados stop growing, they just sit and they wait for an initiation, and that's the cool front. When that comes, the avocados drop their leaves and then they flower. The mangoes will flower about a month after that.
Okay.
So they actually need just a tiny bit of cool to do it right. They can do it in the tropics without it, but to really bloom in sync, they need that little bit of cool. That's okay. 3 minutes.
That's an excellent background, Jeff. I appreciate that. So, so you're saying if we're going to try avocado in the Panhandle, we probably need to be looking more toward Mexican or Haas types.
Exactly.
Okay. And so this person has a question here that Mexican avocado has survived the freezes. And, you know, we have inundating rainfalls. You know, we may get 10 to 12 inches, which we did a couple of weeks ago. So it survived these freezes and floods, but it's just still not really thriving. So could you just cover like some general avocado growing conditions and tips and what they prefer?
Yeah, the thing that stuck out to me there was the high amount of rain, because typically there's a disease in the soil called Phytophthora, and it's always there. And then it gets triggered by a lot of water. So we have it here, and we get a lot of water too, but we have limestone rock. So it's super porous. It never really sits on the roots. It just drains really quickly. Yeah. So that may be an issue with that particular grower, is that they may have Phytophthora, so they may want to get those roots tested at their research center for that. That's probably what's going on. Could be the cold too. You guys get a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, this year we got down into the mid-20s a couple of times. So was that too cold probably?
Yes. And, you know, just because it survived something doesn't mean that made it stronger. You know, there's a song that says that, but in plants, that's not always true. So.
Right. Okay. That saying doesn't necessarily go for avocados. Are you aware of any varieties that may be more, you know, cold or frost tolerant than others with Haas and the Mexican varieties? If not, that's okay. I was just curious.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. Haas is a variety.
That is the variety.
It's like the variety. Yeah, it's like the variety. Down in South Florida, we probably have 30 different varieties that are commercial, but Mexico and California, it's Haas. So
if you're up here in a nursery and you see an avocado that's not Haas, we probably shouldn't buy it. Is what? Okay, awesome answer. That's exactly what I wanted to know. Thanks, Jeff. We'll actually circle back to avocados here in a couple minutes, but we'll take a little break. Matt, I want to go back to cocktail or citrus trees, and you see these cocktail trees sold a lot. And so the question is, will every surviving bloom on my my cocktail tree that I've bought be a fruit. So maybe just talk quickly about what cocktail trees are and, varying success levels you might have had, and then hit that specific question.
Okay. I've never had a cocktail tree myself, but I've seen them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll see them in like mail order catalogs for seeds or trees and turf and different things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could keep every bloom surviving on the tree, they're gonna make a fruit. But citrus are gonna naturally push off some blooms,
Right.
throughout the season. What you can do to help keep as many blooms there as possible is fertilizing at the right time. So, there's a lot of slow release or like time release fertilizers that are good for citrus. You'll see like some fruit tree fertilizers out on the market, and just follow the directions on those labels. The other thing is some people might tend to overwater, or they might have just an irrigation system in place, and it's irrigating that citrus tree when it probably doesn't need it. So if you do push too much water to that tree, it's going to push off some of its blooms because it's happy, so it doesn't need to produce offspring.
Okay.
The same would go if you put down a fertilizer that had too much nitrogen, and it would encourage the tree to put on more leaves. And again, it's happy. It doesn't need babies.
Okay. Just growing and having a big old time.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thanks for that. So yeah, I've had some luck with some of those cocktail trees. Matt, have you seen, like, depending on what gets grafted onto it, like eventually one kind of takes over because it's a more vigorous variety? Is that something you see?
Yeah, I've heard that. And then, I've also had people tell me that if you have limited space, just shove like 3 different citrus trees in one planting hole and let them fight each other out. But the key with citrus, which I should have mentioned earlier, is finding the right rootstock that's going to be healthy in our conditions. So
Okay.
if you can find trees where they actually list what rootstock they're on, rubidoux is probably the best for our area as far as cold tolerance.
Okay.
That's one to look for.
All right. Excellent information there. I guess we'll let it pass for you not mentioning that earlier. I've got a question on another fruit that I could honestly, if you put it in front of me, I would not be able to tell you what it was. Will lychee grow up here in the Panhandle? What do you think? What is a lychee? Is that how you pronounce it? I don't even know.
I guess that question's for me. Matt, was
Yeah,
that for
yeah,
you?
Jeff. Yeah,
Oh,
do
that's
it.
all
Okay.
you. I don't like those things. They don't taste good to me.
I don't know what it is.
Oh, they're delicious. They're
But
delicious.
we've already learned that all fruit is special. So
Oh yeah.
That's right. From the heart. Don't mess with that. There's
That's
passion fruit and there's passion for the fruit.
that's
So lychee, it's lychee chinensis. So
Okay.
a lot of people say lychee, but I
Okay.
always say lychee. They're both correct, but people
Okay.
get real upset if I say lychee. But that's what I grew up saying, so that's what I say. So it's
Okay.
related to longan. It's a sapotacea. It's related to mammosia. It's a fruit about this size, and it's
Okay.
red, and it's sort of white inside, and sort of got the consistency of a grape, but it's sweeter.
Okay.
It does need chill hours. You mentioned chill hours. This
Yeah.
is a tropical fruit that is called tropical that does need a certain amount of banked up chill hours, and it's
Interesting.
moving up the state. We used to have a pretty good industry here, and it's just this year we have no fruit. We have nothing.
Yeah.
We just didn't get the banked chill hours. So it
Okay.
is moving up the state. I don't think it's got all the way to you yet, but it's moving up the state. The other thing to know about lychee is there's a new pest that came in 2018 into Pine Island, Florida on the southwest coast. It's
Mhm.
called lychee arenos mite, LEM. It's an invasive pest. FDACS tried to eradicate it, which they did successfully twice in the past. But in those, when they came into the state in those times, it was like 2 trees. This time it got into a nursery. The nursery sent trees all over the state. So it's in about 13 counties, and
Okay.
it won't be eradicated. So it's a very difficult pest. So I would lean away from lychee if you could.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we get probably varies depending on where you are, basically on the coast or in the northern part of the Panhandle, somewhere between 450 and 700, 800 chill hours, somewhere in there. That's probably too many, but we seem to get a little less every year. So like I say, it may eventually make its way up here. So
Exactly.
okay, very cool. Ray, I'm actually going to throw one to you here about banana trees. So Jet, we've talked about bananas a little bit, but have you seen bananas thriving, kind of where you are down there in Gulf County? And if so, are there particular varieties that you've noticed that do well?
Well, thriving, yeah, that's a little tricky word because really the cold temperatures probably gonna curtail any kind of real thriving of banana trees here. I do love banana trees. I can tell you from a personal point. I think I
They're really
have,
pretty.
yeah, I love them. I love the way they look. I like the ornamental ones in particular. I don't mind it if they don't produce fruit, but and if believe me, I've been in circumstances where I've been on at a client's property, and a lot of people, are not a real big fan of them. And when they purchase a house here, they're like, they want to get rid of them. I'm like, okay, hold on 1 second, let me grab my shovel. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of them. There are a handful of varieties that can be planted in the Panhandle. Now, given that, freezing temperatures or even really cool temperatures are going to stunt them, but they'll typically grow back. There's a dwarf version, dwarf Cavendish is one that you can find throughout Florida too. And it can produce some really good fruit, good tasting fruit, but the freeze is typically gonna knock them back a little bit. There's a pink velvet banana that's beautiful too. I have one in my landscape. It has a really bright pink bloom and pink fruit, outer peel. There are a couple of really cold hardy varieties, but they're not going to really produce fruit that you're going to want to eat. I can tell you that. One's a Japanese fiber banana that will really grow tall too, sky high. I have some of those at my home. And there's another one. There's a black type banana that's very similar, grows very tall. But again,
I did not know you were so into bananas. It's interesting.
Oh man, I love them. I love that look. That's the coastal look. That's Florida to me.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Jeff, I got a quick question. Ray mentioned about those dwarf bananas. So so Ray, you could answer this too. Those are not fruiting at all. Is that correct? Are those ornamental type bananas?
No, they'll fruit.
They do?
Yeah, they produce really, really, sometimes really good yields. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So those like purple leaved ones and stuff you can see at the store sometimes will actually make fruit under the correct conditions.
Correct.
Interesting.
Under the correct conditions.
There you go. That's the important part. All right. Jeff, this is an interesting question that I didn't really think about. We do have a lot up in the Panhandle. We're known for our huge live oak trees, large pine trees, very, very high shade a lot of times. So are there any of these subtropical type fruits that are shade tolerant? I know you mentioned bananas need like sun, but are there any that are not? It's not so important.
I teach the master gardeners a lot, and I teach another class called Why Won't My Tree Fruit? And I teach a class called The 10 Truths of Tropical Fruit. And every time, the first one in all those classes is fruit needs sun to properly produce. That's like the key tenet. Now, that being said, down here, we have something called Monstera deliciosa, which I'm sure you've seen up there as a potted plant. It's that big Swiss cheese plant with the big leaf, has a holes in it, super tropical. I'm sure you grow it there ornamentally.
Absolutely.
That produces an edible fruit that tastes a little bit like pineapple and mixed with banana, mixed with papaya. So that grows well in the shade, and it grows sort of weedy down here. So if you had enough, if it didn't get that cold up there, which would keep going back to, you might be able to do it. The thing about Monstera deliciosa is it's an aroid. And if you know about aroids, they have these little crystals in them that if you bite on them, it'll sting your teeth. It's like a million little razor blades. So the fruit has that as well. So if you eat the fruit too early, you get a little pain in the tongue, which has happened to me. You have to wait till the fruit kind of falls apart, and then you can eat it. So if you want to live on the edge, like I know you guys do, get yourself some Monstera deliciosa.
I have a Monstera, but I've never seen fruit on it. I guess, you know, like you say, it gets killed back every year, but that's interesting.
I've got one that's got a tropical flavor and can grow in the shade, but it's not tropical or subtropical.
I know what you're going to say. Go for it.
That's a pawpaw.
There you go.
Ah.
There you go.
So,
It does
so
look and
sometimes
taste
we don't.
strong.
Sometimes we don't get enough chill hours for pawpaw, but if you could get some pawpaws and you can grow them under some, you know, as an understory tree, that they're great fruit.
They really are good. That's a great suggestion. I knew right where you were going with that.
They kind of look tropical too. The leaves, the
they
way
really
grow.
do. And the fruit's like this light blue color. It's very cool. Jeff, maybe this may be another one of your 10 things for fruit trees. Could you touch on pruning and just in general, do fruit trees kind of as a group require, as far as subtropical goes, need pruning? We know our peaches and plums and things like that obviously do for commercial production, but in the tropical world, is that a thing?
It is a thing, and it's more of a thing than it used to be. And I absolutely love the topic. I'm teaching a class on pruning and planting at the Fruit and Spice Park in a couple weeks. And I love pruning. I wrote an treatise on subtropical and tropical hand pruning of fruit trees.
Mm-hmm.
So something I love. So it is one of the key tenets is when to prune, which you guys probably do the same thing, is you prune after harvest because you don't want to disrupt the flowering cycle. And for us, we want to prune for size control. That's a big issue because if you put an avocado in the ground here and walk away, it's 50 by 50 before you know it. 50 by 50 feet.
Out of control.
Yeah. So once a year, you go in, you take out the strong verticals. You don't take more than 30%. You try to encourage it to go lateral and not vertical. You always want to get sunlight on as much of the tree as you can. So you're going to cut the sides like this, not like this. And you try to open up the center a little bit to light. So it's really size control. And the size control will help you pick the fruit easier. It'll help you spray the tree easier. It's just easier all around.
Okay. Matt, this sounds very similar to what we do with peaches and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would push everything to the lateral. So
yeah. Get that light in there. Okay. Very good. Thanks, Jeff, on that one. Matt, since I've got you on the line here, I'm going to ask you this question. This listener has a healthy 4-year-old pomegranate tree. You know, they've pruned it properly. They get 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. You know, it irrigates once per week. Why aren't they making fruit? What would you say?
Oh, you asked me the pomegranate question. I've never had success with pomegranate. I mean, that might be a chill hour, or you know, the pomegranate are susceptible to a lot of, you know, humidity related diseases, just because they're like olives. They're another Mediterranean crop. So I would think it would be something to do with that. And just like any of our fruit trees, we'll go back to planting depth and look into that as well. Or it could just be an ornamental pomegranate. There are ornamental pomegranate trees that they produce beautiful flowers, but they're not going to make like an edible fruit.
Yeah, pomegranates and olives do kind of get lumped in people's minds as tropicals, but definitely not. So, Ray, this is a good question. I like this one. Just looking around, seeing folks coming in the extension office and asking questions, what do you think are the subtropical fruits that are garnering the most interest in the Panhandle right now? You know, as our temperatures have warmed over time and people are getting interested in this, what are the plants that folks are most interested in?
I'd say the plant that has the most interest right now that I'm seeing is, and I'll go back to what Matt was talking about earlier, and that's the loquat. And there are 20, I think there's 20 plus varieties of loquat that can be grown across the state. And I think most of them could be grown here, if not all. Very popular. A really pretty evergreen tree, grows pretty quickly, can get, 30 feet tall if you let it. Like I said, the really, sandy, well-drained soils that we have through here, doesn't like the wet feet though, doesn't like the flooding like and the heavy moisture soils like the banana trees do. But it's a nice focal point, in someone's yard. I've seen that in landscaping design. I mean, there are some fungal issues that we have from time to time with the loquat, but some blight issues. But pruning and fungicide applications can just about control that. But I would say that would be the number one that I see, that I hear a lot about, is where can I get a loquat? What kind of loquat tree would grow well here?
Well, that's good because you can actually do that pretty easily.
Yes.
And their wood does well on the smoker too.
Really?
You know what, that's one of my favorite for smoking.
Nice.
Okay, so put up the pecan and use the loquat then.
Yeah, you get that nice apple wood hint.
Okay, Jeff, I see you just begging to say something.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you, the wood. I wasn't begging to say anything, sir. I was just saying, smoking. Yes, I'm hungry too.
I mean, I normally eat lunch at 11, byproduct of
Yeah.
our industry out of college. We ate lunch at 11 every day, so I'm still doing that. So y'all have gotten me almost 2 hours past my lunch break, so my stomach is growling. But Jeff, I'll answer this question to you. What are people down in Miami-Dade most interested in right now?
It's always mango. Mango is number one. Mango's
Really?
the king of tropical fruit. There's over 1,000 different cultivars. It depends where you grew up, which kind of mango you like. Mangoes are king.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say to Julie and Beth, you guys are killing it in the chat. Just want to.
They are, man. They
want
are
to
right
point
on
that out.
award-winning chat.
It's right. It's true.
Yeah. So Jeff, or Matt or whoever, this is probably not a Jeff question, but Matt, we have a question in the Q&A. What's the best geographical site for olives? Like on a south slope, a high pH, what do they prefer?
So if you can get a high elevation where you get some good winds coming through on a sandy soil, that would be your best spot.
Okay, nice.
So between your county and Jackson County, there's a little bit of a ridge. That's a good spot for that.
Yeah, they like that sandy ridge out there is really good for that kind of stuff. Jeff, I'll throw this one to you. What are the pH requirements for avocado?
Well, our pH is
Y'all are high down there, right?
Yeah, super high because of that limestone soil
Yeah.
I mentioned. We have oolitic limestone, which is only found, this particular type, only found here and in the Bahamas. And our
Interesting.
pH is very high. It's 7.8 to 8.8, and avocados do very well. And circling back to the king of tropical fruit in South Florida, I don't want to get in trouble here because avocados have by far the most acreage. So before any commercial avocado growers come after me, I want to say avocados they're right there with mangoes. Just so I don't get in trouble with my commercial growers.
Gotcha. We're just doing some cleaning house on some of these questions here. We've got really good interaction from y'all in the chat. I appreciate that. And for our Facebook listeners, that's awesome too. Jeff, we had a question about a plant that I'm not super familiar with. It's called Akee, A-K-E-E.
That is when you saw my eyes light up when you called on me, because I saw that question. It's called Aki. It's got a good story. Yeah, it's got. I would bet you $10 to $20 that the person that asked that question is Jamaican. It's very Caribbean fruit, and it's related to lychee, longan, and mamosilla, also called Spanish lime. It's in the sapandaceae. And the great thing about it is, if you eat it before it's ready, it will kill you. It's poisonous. So you have to wait till it opens up and then you can eat it. So Jamaicans know exactly how to eat it. They'll grow it in their yard. They'll cook it with saltfish and cod. They love it. But for you guys,
be careful.
You can't grow it and it'll kill you. I'm not going to grow it. It used to be in the Fruit and Spice Park in a section called Dangerous and Poisonous Plants.
Oh, okay.
But they got rid of that section. I wonder why.
Yeah. So one of our newest agents here in the Panhandle in District 1 is named Donna Arnold. She is actually from Jamaica. So I'm gonna have to get Donna to bring me some. Is it Akee, you said?
Aki.
Aki. Okay. I have to get Donna to bring me some Aki. So Donna, I see you on here. You have to get us some of that. Make sure it's right though. I mean, I don't need any of that going on.
Let me just interject. I saw Beth put Aki is Spanish lime. I
Yeah.
meant Mamosio is Spanish lime. Aki is just Aki. So
Okay.
Aki is not Spanish lime. Let me clear.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
my mistake.
Okay. Ray and Matt, I'll throw this one to you. This is a question from our lovely guest, Clara Mullins, who we love, always supports us, Guarding the Panhandle Live. Any other unusual or non-mainstream fruit trees, not even necessarily tropical, that we could try up here in the Panhandle? Y'all got any ideas?
I have one.
All right.
I didn't have, full disclaimer, I didn't have great luck growing it, but I'm going to try again. I think it's just location was the issue. But if you want to try something, just like you say, just kind of unique and interesting, try a UFO peach. This is a peach tree that's bred by the University of Florida, and it's it's kind of like a Saturn peach, or what's called a white donut peach, if you've ever had one of those. If you've ever been out west into Utah or California, there's a lot of orchards in those areas, and they're really delicious peaches. This peach is actually a more of a yellow meated peach, but it actually looks like very similar to what a donut would look like.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very neat.
Okay,
Delicious
Matt, what you got for us?
I'll go to two of my favorite plants that also produce like a lime flavored fruit.
Okay.
So I would go with an Agichi tupelo tree. It's a
Okay.
beautiful form tree. Has fruit that kind of tastes like limes, and then a pineapple guava shrub. Again, another lime type fruit or tasting fruit. One that I want to try is, I think you pronounce it jujube, but I don't know anything about it. But I think it would grow here.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Jeff, you got any suggestions for unusual things that we could push the limit on?
So I kind of stole my own thunder with the Monastera Deliciosa.
That's
So,
okay. You can be thinking.
Yeah, I'm going to drop that question.
Okay, you be thinking. We're going to pass on that
I'll
one.
be thinking, yeah.
Matt, you're over there around the West Florida Research and Education Center, so this question will be perfect for you. What fruits are, tropical or otherwise are currently being evaluated by UF for our zone 8 and 9 up here in the Panhandle?
So we mentioned some different citrus earlier. So there are some different like Tangelo Mandarin type varieties. Just because our Satsuma mandarins produce so late in the year, if we could get something that was a little bit earlier, maybe earlier September, so that we don't have to worry about any frost or freeze conditions damaging those fruit. Other than that, we've just got some of your traditional like pear and peach that have been at that research center for a long time. So they're still doing okay, as long as they're pruned properly. So
Okay, nice, good to know. And I'll throw this to Jeff as well. Jeff, what's new and interesting going on down there at Trek as far as fruit goes?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's finger lime. You guys have probably heard. Dr. Manjul is working with finger limes. We have some at the Tropical Research Education Center. They came up with two new releases, two new cultivars from UF. So it's related to citrus. It's citrus greening tolerant. So that's important, as you guys know. And it looks like a little finger, and then inside it looks like caviar. So it wouldn't be something that you really just eat, like a peach. It would be something that you kind of put as a garnish or on a $50 drink, something like that. So it's very specialized, but there is tiny bit of acreage in South Florida, and it is something that grows well there. It's growing well at the research center.
Okay, awesome. Guys, this has been one of the most fun Guarding the Panhandle Live webinars we've done. I really appreciate everybody joining us today to talk about tropical fruit in the Panhandle. I hope you learned something today and can take some things home with you in your home garden. I really want to thank our panelists. Ray, you want to leave us with a thought?
Happy gardening out there. How about that?
Ray, okay. You want to leave us with a thought? Jeff, how about yourself?
If you know it, you can grow it.
How about yourself? Fair enough. How about Matt?
I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter.
All right. Well, we thank y'all for tuning in with us today. Please join us next time on May the 19th for our next Gardening in the Panhandle Live on pollinators and flowers for the landscape. Also, go ahead and fill out our survey before you get out there. Julie just posted that in the chat. Really helps us know what we need to do better on and continue to put on these webinars that are relevant and useful to you guys. And with that, we hope y'all have a great rest of your day and a happy Easter weekend. Thanks again to all of our panelists and behind the scenes folks. And we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for